But what I would really like from you, if it's all right, is I'd really love you to give me 3 lessons through your eyes. Now you're reflecting on your life, because his perspective on life had completely changed when he had a time limit put on it. Things that used to bother him didn't bother him any longer. And he was like, all right, okay, I'll think about those, but it's a lot easier for me to give you the money.
What's up, everybody? This is Paul Critchley, president of New England Lean Consulting. Welcome to another episode of the New England Lean Podcast. So lots and lots of good stuff going on over here. Certainly the least of which is not Easter. We happen to celebrate that holiday. So if you do as well, I hope you got some good time in with friends and family in celebration of the holiday. Second big news, I guess, is we have a brand new website. So if you would, I would love it if you could go check it out. It's newenglandlean.com. It's basically a complete revamp from our old website, which I think is a good thing. But yeah, we finally have a podcast page. We highlight the lean certification that we offer. Finally, we've been working on that in the background for a while. We have online training, so we have 55 online courses. So we finally have that kind of front and center, as well as Six Sigma, the quality management systems training and consulting that we do. So the site's really looking awesome. It works great. We've been beta testing it, for the last week or so, just to make sure everything works. So I would love to hear your feedback. So please go check that out. Shoot me a note, email, LinkedIn inbox me, and just let me know what you think. And finally, as you no doubt heard in the lead-in, we welcome our first international guest to the podcast this week in Lee Houghton. So Lee and I have kind of known each other for a few years, although we've never met in person, thanks COVID. But we have something like 400 LinkedIn connections in common. So we certainly run in the same social circle, at least electronically. So we've interacted a little bit on each other's posts. So I sort of knew what Lee was all about. And he puts out some things that I really was impressed by. So we kind of hooked up to get him on the show. And I was so glad that he did, because as we were planning this show out, Lee shared what he wanted to talk about with me. And it's really very powerful. And so the story he walks us through are the 3 lessons that he learned from his best friend that he grew up with, whose name was Chris. Unfortunately, Chris passed away from cancer. But before he did, Lee asked him, "What are 3 lessons that you can teach me?" And he did. And as I mentioned, Lee walks us through those in this episode. But, I think we can all relate to that story in some way, shape, or form. One of the things I really love about doing this show is I get to welcome guests on that give me, and I hope you, some perspective. I talk a lot about respect for people and making connections and finding common ground and approaching people from where they are. And I really feel like Lee's story nails it when it comes to giving us all some perspective. And I'm guilty of this. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day stuff that I think sometimes we lose the forest for the trees. So it's a very powerful episode. I cannot thank Lee enough for agreeing to come on and share Chris's story with us. So give it a listen. And as always, I hope you like it. I hope you get something from it. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate you. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you real soon. All right, welcome to the New England Lean Podcast. As I mentioned in the intro, we welcome our first international guest, Lee Houghton. Lee.
How are you, Paul?
Good. I'd say good morning, but it's not morning where you are.
It's not. No, it's just gone past midday. So we're just into the afternoon now. Yes, and thank you for adding the additional pressure of being the first international guest in this conversation as well.
Well, I'm nothing if not high pressure, Lee. I mean, you gotta bring your A game today, or else.
Yeah, if I wasn't sweating before, Paul, I am now.
So our listenership is primarily in the States, obviously. And regionally, I try to keep it, to kind of New England, but obviously, by the same token, lean is everywhere. So you're in the UK. So not everybody knows everybody. So if you wouldn't mind, take a couple of minutes and just kind of introduce yourself, let people know who you are and kind of what you do. That'd be awesome.
Perfect. No, thanks very much, Paul. So yeah, so my name is Lee Houghton. I guess I could say I'm from Old England, as opposed to New England. So yeah, I live in England. I'm in the northwest of England, in between Manchester and Liverpool. And for the last 15, 16 years, I have been working with individuals, teams, and businesses to try to help them get better, both as an internal change person and then more in the last 2-3 years as an external change person. And that's when I created or co-founded a business with my business partner called Jason, called Get Knowledge, because we believe fundamentally that improvement all starts with getting knowledge, because your thinking has to change. And I think it was Socrates that said, I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think. And that's what we try to do. And I think if you can make people think, then it's up to them about whether they choose a different direction or they want to do something different. So yeah, so 15 years as a change practitioner, internally and externally. And it's far easier being an external change person than it was being an internal change person. So yeah, so that's me. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Paul.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you, and I'm so glad that you reached out, because I think I put the call out on LinkedIn a while ago now, and I think you had in-mailed me. So I'm very thankful that you did so, because again, before we hopped on, we were chatting. So we trade, knowledge or whatever, right, on LinkedIn, and I've seen your stuff, and I really liked it. So I was kind of excited, actually. I'm like, oh, I should have thought of reaching out to you in the first place to see if you wanted to come on.
Yeah, no, amazing. No, honestly, I'm glad we've managed to get this sorted. Yeah, so I try to do things a little bit different on LinkedIn than a lot of people. I think what is really difficult is trying to stand out. Everybody talks about improvement and change, but really, how do you get people to? And everybody thinks that they improve what they do, but I'm not necessarily that they see the improvement like come through to the bottom line. So people see a lot of improvement, but not a lot of things change. And I think that happens on social media. It's also, I'm trying to stand out on that front as well. So yeah, so it's good.
Yeah, and that's one of the knocks, I'll tell you, is I've had a few clients and a couple of listeners, as a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, reach out and say, because they follow me or we're connected on LinkedIn, and they say, it's so hard. Like, I'm thinking of this one particular client. He says, it's just so hard because we're just learning about lean, and they're a small job shop.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm trying to learn these things to try to help drive it. And, obviously, he's looking at me. He's like, well, that's why, you're here. He goes, but, one of the things is you see it on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever, and it's all the perfect stuff. And it just you see this daily huddle board, and it's, perfect KPIs and, the idea boards and all this stuff. And he's like, it's really quite intimidating. He goes, because when I look at that and I think, I don't see how to get there. So my advice is always, well, for one, you can only believe maybe half of that. I call it leading the Instagram life, because, that's the stuff that people promote and they put out there, but you're not seeing, that's the top 10% of the iceberg. You're not seeing all the other stuff where they tripped and fell and failed 1,000 times. And I say, honestly, if you look to the left or the right by 10 degrees, you're going to see something totally different. Even that might be, looking really good. That's not to say that's everywhere. So, because it really is a journey, even though I kind of hate that. It's kind of a cliche, the whole lean journey thing, but it's true. But that's why I can appreciate, again, the stuff that you put out there, because to me, it doesn't come off that way. It doesn't come off as, here's the, 99th percentile of what you should be doing or what this, is. It's more of the middle part where I think a lot of people are, where it's the struggle, it's the journey, it's the, we're trying and we made a little bit of progress and we're going to celebrate that.
Yes, completely agree. I love that it's a Facebook or Instagram effect, because completely agree with that. Everybody only puts and shows what they want, how they want their life to be perceived, or how they want their business to be perceived, or how they want their change journey to be perceived. And I think it is blooming difficult delivering change. We're dealing with people ultimately, and there's no bigger variability or than people, and that's the biggest thing. And a lot of times when we deliver change, we don't take that into account. We deliver the business compelling reason for that change. But why does that person need to come in tomorrow to do something different? Why do we not talk and understand that? And when the pandemic hit, 12 months ago, this coming weekend, the UK went into lockdown, and I was sat there reflecting about my 15 years in change, going, okay, now clients don't want me to, or I'm not allowed to go and see any clients, not allowed to go and work with any clients. So me and Jason, we spoke about how can we still support our clients. So we said, well, we need to learn how to try to deliver and facilitate improvement online, which we've done, and we've done really successfully. And that's not a new product. But when I was sat there, I was thinking, change has been the best job in the world and also the worst job in the world. I've been so lonely at times, being that single person trying to push that boulder uphill, trying to get people to buy into it that don't want to buy into it, that actually that are terrorists towards it in some certain degree in terms of delivering change. How can I help the people that actually want to make things better? And so I pulled together this course called Creating Confident Change Leaders, and it's about 5 modules. And when I was pulling it together in the structure, I was thinking about my 15 years and the journey that I'd been on personally. And module 1 is change starts with you. And there's a reason why change starts with you, because I think we have got to be flexible in our approach. What we've done in one business or one team or with one person isn't going to work necessarily with another team, and because they've got different thinking that's taken them to that place. So I think the first thing for any change person, for any leader to recognize, is that actually if they want somebody else to do something different, they might have to do something different themselves. So yeah, it's been a strange old last 12 months, but I think it's been quite a reflective 12 months as well about what is really important in change, Paul.
Right, right. One of the things I like to say is that people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And it gets to what you mentioned. And I like the way you put it, because I hadn't thought about it that way. Why? Why do I care? If I go in and I'm punching the clock, what, and I find that we do that as an external consultant. I don't go talk to somebody on the shop floor who's running a lathe or a mill or a nurse or a doctor that says, well, if you do these things, then the business gets better. The hospital can do better, because, some people that'll speak to, but some people it won't. But if I can say, your life gets a lot better, it's a lot easier to manage. You're going to be less stressed, all that kind of stuff. Well, that's their compelling case for change. But
yes,
I really like the way you put it, because, you and I walk into a place and the first inclination is, who the heck is this guy? Like, you're going to come tell me how to do my job? Have you ever done my job? And I get that question. And a lot of them think, no, I haven't. But you got to find, right. You got to find that common ground. And sometimes you're right. It does feel like you're pushing a boulder uphill.
Yeah, completely. Just on that, I was working with a client recently on. They've got a team that's quite resistant to change, and I said, well, we need to consider 5 whys, and he went like, 5 whys. We all know 5 whys. Why? Let's be a child. And I was like, no. I've got a different take on this 5 why thing. I says, when we're doing it, there's a reason why we need to change for a business. So that's the first why. Why does the business need to change? And then why do the senior leaders need to change, or why is this important? Why is this important to the senior leaders? Then why is it important to the team leaders and people leaders? And then why is it important to the operators? And then why is it important to the change team? And I said, when you understand those 5 separate whys, you can change your messaging and communication depending upon who you're talking to, because you can't use the business reason for the operators, because about profitability and stuff, why are they interested in that? You can't use the senior leaders why for the change team, because they've got competing priorities. So I think that's one way is I try to just be flexible with the tools that people are familiar with, and then just kind of shift it a little bit to try to get them to solve a problem that's in front of them. So yeah, so that's the 5 whys for that, because I think it's so important. What you've just said there about people come up to you and ask you, as an outsider coming in, why can you help them? I remember when I was 26, I got my first job in change, and I went into the pub that night to celebrate with my friends. And my best mate at the time, a guy called Chris, he said to me, he said, "Oh, you're one of them, are you?" I said, "What do you mean, one of them?" He said, "One of them that go into people's work where they are, tell them how to do their job better." He says, "If you come into where I work and tell me how to do my job better, I would tell you to go away." And I didn't realise how important that sentence was that he said to me all of those years ago. I just thought we were having a laugh. But then reflecting back on it, I've been trying to. If my best mate wouldn't trust me to deliver change with him, then what chance has anybody else that hasn't even met me and I'm walking in for the first time? And I think that's why it's so important to build with. In fact, actually, I'm just going to waffle for a little bit longer if that's all right. I went on a I went on a stand-up comedy course last year, and it was day one of this stand-up comedy course, and they said to me, "What's the most important thing in change? Oh, well, sorry, what's the most important thing in stand-up comedy?" And everybody said jokes were the most important thing in stand-up comedy. I went, no, that's third most important thing in stand-up comedy. And so then the conversation developed further, and they said that the most important thing in stand-up comedy is connection with the audience. Because if you've got that connection, it's like the children's nativity play at Christmas. It is the worst performance that parents have ever seen. People forget dodgy outfits, you forget the words, terrible singing, but at the end of it, there's rapturous applause, tears are flowing. But for anybody else, that was the worst performance ever. But to a parent whose child is on stage, that is the best performance ever. So if you can get a connection with the audience, then you can talk to them. And then the second lesson, so it was a connection first, then it was performance is second. So they said when you're telling jokes, it's you've got two lines. You've got setup and you've got punchline, and you need to vary your attitude or your tone between setup and punchline to make it easier for the audience to know when to laugh. And then third is the material, and typically change people, we believe in our material so much that we lead with it. And where I guess what I'm trying to get people to understand and to see is that actually, like those 5 whys, it's leading with connection, leading with the things that are important to them, then vary your performance dependent upon who it is you're talking to, and then the material is just the material. That's how we're going to get from here to here. So yeah, so apologies for the digression there, Paul.
No, Lee, absolutely not. You don't have to apologize, because that's I love that, because you're absolutely right. We see, and I'm sure you do too, these online arguments sometimes about, well, what respect for people really means and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, what you just said is exactly what it means. If we walk in, whether we're an internal or an external, change agent, if we walk into a cell or an area or a department, and we all of a sudden, well, you guys need to do this or this, this, that, or the other thing, we don't have that personal relationship yet. So then it gets, I think that invites that resistance first. But if we walk in and we say, "Hey, my name's Lee, my name is Paul, we do this, and we're just be a person, right? And just be open and friendly." When you build that trust, then you can bring in all this other stuff. And I find that it's way easier. It's way easier to get the investment and the buy-in from folks, because they're like, all right, well, I know him. I know he knows what he's talking about. I've seen what he's done. I like the guy. So, right. And you kind of get over that like resistance hump, if you want to put it that way. Right.
Yeah, completely. I remember my very first role as an external management consultant working for a consultancy firm. We turned up to a client site. We were all suited, and we walked into the site, and then nobody in the site. It was an office. Nobody was wearing shirts and ties and stuff. It was quite casual. And then they just saw these 3 people in fully suited. And I got to the end of that, and I was like, that is all wrong. That's all. So when I got to the end, I got to the end of walking through the office and got to an office at the end. I was thinking, what on earth is everybody outside going to be thinking about these 3 people that are all wearing black suits with ties not dressed like us, not being introduced to any of us, got the senior manager walking them through, silence.
Mm-hmm.
I was like thinking, I've now got to try to engage these people in a change. What are their first impressions of me? And I was like, oh no, this is all wrong. This is all wrong. And this is one of the reasons why myself and Jason, we set up our consultancy or coaching business, because it's all about, we're all people, aren't we? It's human led. And it's, if we can just build stronger relationships with people, then we can help people see and think differently. But yeah, so that was a big learning moment. That was, when I got to the end of that floor.
Yeah,
And
I've made that mistake too, right? Because you want to convey professionalism and the whole thing, and then sometimes you're like, I stick out like a sore thumb, and it actually hurts you later, because
yeah,
people are like, oh, and I've had this comment before, so I'm not making any qualms about anything, but I've had that happen, and then we went in later, and like we got over it as they got to know me. But initially, someone's like, "Oh, I remember you were part of that God Squad that walked through," and
yes.
I'm like, that right there was the moment when I had the same realization as you. I'm like, uh-oh, I can't do that anymore. You know, that's just like you said, it's just not right. You know, you're walking through with 3 or 4 other people, and you're just, walking through the shop, and everybody's working, and they see you and they have no idea
Yeah.
who you are. And you're with the senior managers. So you must be right of relative
Yeah.
importance. It sets a weird tone that's, probably
Yeah.
maybe not where you want to come out from, right out
No,
of the gate.
no, it stacks it all against you right from the off. Yeah, especially if you're building connection, and that's not the right way to build connection. It's like if you go to a bar to meet somebody for the very first time, you wouldn't do that with them. You wouldn't, would you? So it's like, what have you got to do to actually get to know people? We're all people. We're all humans trying to do a job, and not many people go to work to try to do a bad job.
Mm.
So it's just, how can you help each other? And I don't think that's one way to help people.
Nope, I'd have to agree with that one. Right. So, Lee, you and I had chatted a little bit too when we were kind of trying to get this thing going, which admittedly has been a while. So again, I'll say thank you publicly for being patient with me while we try to get it on the calendar. But you had mentioned something like lessons that you've kind
Yes.
of learned that have a pretty important story behind it. So I wanted just to kind of open it up, so throw it over to you so you can kind of walk us all through that.
Amazing. No, thank you, Paul. When you don't need to apologise actually for that, because I thought, actually, do you know, you might have read a book. Do you know, like if you read them dating books and they tell you to not reply too quickly, or to keep them waiting a little bit longer. You've built the excitement that much. So I couldn't wait to come on and talk to you today. So it worked, Paul. It worked.
Yes. Yeah. That was the whole plan the whole time, Lee.
There you go. No, honestly, it worked an absolute treat. So yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. And I guess when I want to talk about these, I'll just ask you a question. Actually, do you have a friend that you might not have seen for a week, or you might not have seen for a month, but when you get back together, it's like you haven't been apart?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, every time I ask that question, everybody does. And mine is a guy called Chris, the guy who I referred to right at the start, when he said, if you come in and get a job and blah blah blah. Yeah, that guy. And so me and Chris, we moved into the same street when we were 1 year olds. We grew up together. We went to different schools. And our mums were best friends and stuff. So he'd grown up with me throughout. And I was working on a client site about 2.5 years ago, and I got a phone call to say that I needed to come home because Chris had taken a turn for the worst. So I got on a train, and then I got to my train station, got in a taxi that took me to the hospice where he was. And I walked through the door, and his sister was in the room. His one of our other friends was in the room, and his ex-partner was in the room, and Chris was lying on the bed, and he was a lot weaker and a lot paler than he was just a few days previous when I'd seen him. So I sent everybody else away. I said I would do the night shift with him that night. So because he had stage 4 cancer. This was his third bout of cancer now. So I lay on the couch, dabbing his lips during the night and chatting about good times and things that we'd done. And at 10 to 8 in the morning, because my breakfast was due at 8 o'clock, I got up and I said, right, Chris, I'll be back in a minute. I'm just going to go into the bathroom. I'm going to have a wash and brush my teeth. And then I left the bathroom and I looked over at him and his chest expanded. And then that was it. He'd chosen that moment to leave us. So I made a few phone calls and told everybody that the time had come and that Chris had sadly passed. And I went outside the hospice, and it was July, and I sat on a bench, and the sun was beating down on me. And I was thinking to myself, I'm a fraud because I'm not doing what I wanted to do. I was 39 at the time. Chris was 30. I was 38 at the time. Chris was 39 when he passed. I tell my kids every single morning that they can be whatever they want to be when they grow up. And I wasn't being whatever I wanted to be. I was working as a consultant, but in a consultancy, not my own business. And then I got to think about reflecting on the life lessons that Chris shared with me, because when he was told he was terminal, I was the first person to see him after the nurse had told him, and he was like, I'm going to come into some money, I'm going to extract my pension and set up the trust fund for his 2 boys. And he went, you've always wanted to be a consultant. He said, let me give you £3,000 and let me set you up. I was like, no, Chris, I don't want any of your money at all. I said, but what I would really like from you, if it's all right, is I really love you to give me 3 lessons through your eyes. Now you're reflecting on your life, because his perspective on life had completely changed when he had a time limit put on it. Things that used to bother him didn't bother him any longer. And he was like, all right, okay, I'll think about those, but it's a lot easier for me to give you the money. Anyway, so over a couple of weeks passed, and then I got to the hospital, and he went, right, I've had a think, and I've got the first one for you. And he was like, when him and an ex-partner were splitting up, he said he tried to be somebody he wasn't. He tried to be who he thought she wanted him to be. And he said that they still ended up splitting up. It didn't make him happy, didn't make her happy. And they still ended up splitting up. So he said, no matter what in life, Lee, just always be yourself. And so that was the first lesson. And then I think back to the conversation that we've just had there, Paul, about building connection and building relationships with people and who we are as individuals. Then that's the most important thing, that we always need to be ourselves. A couple of weeks then passed, and I went to see him again, and he said one of our other friends rings him at 12 o'clock every single day. I come and visit him when I'm not working. And he said when we were growing up, we could have chosen different paths and different avenues, but we didn't. And he said if he did then the friends that he was more likely to have been friends with then, he said they wouldn't have visited him in hospital, they wouldn't have gone to the hospice with him, they wouldn't have tried to help him. He said, so he says, no matter what, just make good friends, because you never know when you're going to need them. So that was the second one. And then just about 2 or 3 weeks before he passed, we had an opportunity to go watch the Foo Fighters at the Etihad Stadium in Manchester.
Wow.
It was amazing. He bought tickets before he was really, really ill. 8 of us went. We broke him out of the hospice, and we went to the hospice, and there was 2 cars. There was him and his ex-partner and his two young boys. So they were 14 and 16 at the time in one car, and then 4 of us in another car. We had an amazing day. And on the way back from that, his youngest boy said to his mum, he said, is it too late for me and my dad to go to Liverpool? So we all support Liverpool. He said, is it too late for us to go to Anfield for a stadium tour? So I got a phone call that Thursday night, and I then arranged for us to go to Liverpool for a guided tour on the Sunday. And it was an amazing day. We had ice creams, we had discount in the shop, we had a private tour, we had as much time as we wanted. And in the car on the way home, Chris sat next to me. His 2 boys sat behind, and my boy sat behind me. And he looked over at me and went, how many times could we have done this? I said, yeah, we could have done it a lot. He said, well, why did we wait till when I was in a wheelchair and I had to be wheeled round? Why did we not do it sooner, when I could have sat on the seats that you sat on? So he said the third lesson is time is limited. So it was sat on that bench outside the hospice with thinking about Chris's 3 lessons. I was going, always be myself, make good friends, time's limited. So he said them to me 2.5 years ago, and I'm still getting to grips with what they mean to me. And he had his reasons for choosing those 3 lessons, but I genuinely believe that in the last 2.5 years, before Chris passed, I thought I was all right at this improvement thing. Since Chris has passed and he shared those three things, that I have tweaked my approach a little bit, and I'm trying to live and breathe these three things in everything I do. But I think whether it's change, whether it's sales, whether it's just living life, if we can always be ourselves, make good friends. So in fact, actually, always be ourselves. For me now, it means about understanding that your thoughts drive your behavior. And it comes back to that Socrates quote: is I can't teach anybody anything, I can only make them think. So if we as change professionals can make people think enough, then they are likely to make a positive change towards wherever, to make their lives better. So that's what always being yourself means for me. Making good friends, whether that's connections, clients, customers. It's all about relationships. It's all about people. So just make good friends, whoever they are. And then the third one of my biggest frustrations is people who say that they want to do better, make something better, but they only want to start at the beginning of next month, or they only want to start at the beginning of next year, or whatever.
Right.
But why wait? If your motivation is there, if you really wanted to make it better, then time is limited. So act now. So it's with those three lessons that, in fact, the creating confident change leaders course I spoke about before, there's 5 modules of that. Change starts with you, understanding yourself, creating allies and storytelling, influencing others, and then acting now, because time's limited. But really, those, if you look at all of the lessons within those things, change starts with you, and understanding yourself is all about always being you. Creating allies, storytelling, and influencing others is all about making good friends. And then the third one is time's limited, so act now. And so those 3 lessons that Chris shared with me are the foundations for everything I do, everything that I do within the business, and it's the foundation for a lot of that stuff, because I think it's fundamentally, if I can help people just recognize and understand what those 3 things mean for them, then that's success for me. And that's why I want to have amazing conversations with people like yourself, Paul, because I think as change professionals, as leaders, if we can just embrace those 3 lessons, understand what they mean to us, but then start to live them, then the world will be a far better place.
Right? Wow. There's a lot there, Lee, and I give you and Chris, amazing amounts of credit for him to have that perspective and be able to share that with you is amazing. And as you were talking, obviously I'm thinking a lot of different things. I can't find, not that it's my job or I even should, but I can't find fault with any of that, because it's spot on. Right. Yeah. And so I'll pick on the last one first, right? We see it with clients sometimes, or potential clients, where it's, they'll reach out and they'll say, we want to do lean. It's because we have this problem or that problem. And, same as you, I'll reach out every 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I'll say, hey, just checking in. Well, the time, it's not quite right. This just happened. That just happened. And we've had a few that it's like, it gets to like 6, 8, 9 months.
Yeah.
And they're still like, yeah, it's just, I'm like, you know what? You're waiting for the right time, and that time's never going to come. Because as you said, right, as Chris said, time's limited. And I feel like it's a perspective thing, like you and I are probably roughly the same age, mid-40s.
Yeah, possibly. You might just be a touch older than me. So I'm early to mid, Paul.
All right. Right. So but Chris was 39.
Yes.
Right. My mom was 52. So you don't know, you assume, right? Because like I'm an engineer, so I'm a scientific thinker, and I'm like, all right, well, average, I'll probably make it to plus family history, yada. But don't know. You don't know. So you got to make the most of it right now. And to your point, it's, if you want to talk about the continuous improvement world, just do it, right? Nike applies. Yeah. Just if you want to do it, you got to start now. Just do one little thing. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but start. That's the hardest part. It's like, right, losing weight, quitting smoking, right? All those types of things. You have to, 1, make that decision, and then 2, do something about it.
Completely. And if you're not doing something about it, then your motivation or reason to do it is not big enough. Mm-hmm. And it comes back down to what you were saying then, Paul, is that that's why people wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, because the world that they're living in isn't bad enough for them to do something different. And by recognizing that everybody is different and every organization is different, every person is different, then a lot of it can't be forced, because they've got to be thinking about it themselves, to then actually want to do it if it's going to sustain. As well, which is why I then use those 5 whys to try to understand and articulate what is in it for that person or business. Yeah, and it's true, isn't it, that change is really simple to say, but it's not easy to do, because of all of these things. But yeah, time is definitely limited, Paul.
Yeah, and to your point too that you just made, the want has to be there. If you, and I like how you broke it down into 5 things, because I think it was Duran that said the language of management is money, right?
Yeah.
So you got to put that right. And so and when we do workshops and stuff, I'll teach it, but I don't break it down as good as you have. You have to put things in the right context of who you're speaking with and speaking to gain that like investment. And it also helps them understand, I call it WeFM, what's in it for me, like everybody else does, right? But again, it gets back to that. What am I going to spend my time doing, right? And I'll speak to value add, non-value add. And I like to draw the parallel between that. So I say, when you come into work, you're there for 8 hours or 10 hours. What do you spend your time doing? Is it value added or non-value added? And that value is different for different people, different levels of the organization, right? Different departments. What might be important to you isn't important to me, and we might be working right side by side, right? So you have to ferret all that stuff out, because it's right. That's the part where you get to the sustainment piece.
Completely.
Right. And I'm sure you have, just like I have, had clients that they want the end result.
Yes.
They don't want to do anything to get there. They just want it. Like, I pay you, you come in, you do all this stuff, and then we get that. And it's like, no, that's not how any of this works. You have to own this part. I can come in and help teach, help coach, I can get your folks excited about it. But if you're not a part of it, if you're not you're like, you can't just come in the beginning and the end of the Kaizen event and say, I approve of this message, and just that, it doesn't work that way. And we've had clients, unfortunately, that didn't do it right. And then they get mad at us. We're like, well, it didn't sustain. I'm like, well, I haven't been there in 6 months. What? Where were you?
Completely. And that's why when I was reflecting in March around this creating confident change leaders, that's why module 1 is change starts with you. And it's not just the person who needs to change the production of something or the creation of something. It's leaders as well. It's everybody that needs to recognize how they need to change to make this thing, whatever the thing is, more successful. But yeah, everybody needs to change, and people need to be accepting of that. But to be accepting of it, they've got to think differently as well.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever had an instance where somebody's come back to you when you're teaching this course, or right? Have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, you know what, Lee, like an epiphany or an aha moment, right? Where somebody says, I didn't get it. And then I got it.
Yes. Yeah, because so in fact, I say on one of the cohorts that I'm going through now, they were volunteered to come on this course because they thought that their leader thought it would be a good thing for them to come on this course. And during this course, they have said that they need to change the way that they're doing. An example. So one of the really small things that I change in module 3, or we talk about in module 3, is how people communicate. And everybody gets a lot of emails. So on average, I think people get about 100 emails a day. And just like social media, your challenge with the emails is to try to get your email to stand out within, to make somebody feel something, so they open it and then act on what you're saying. And if you've not got the connection with the recipient, then your email has got just as much chances that the other 99 have been opened. Mm-hmm. But if you can create connection in the subject header, then that increases the likelihood of somebody. And there was a lady on my course that said she said that I've been sending an email to the senior site person now for the last 2 months, and they don't seem to be reading it, or they don't seem to be replying to me. And so they said, I said, how could you overcome that? What could you do? And they went, well, we could follow this impact model. So the impact is the model that I've got for this. And they said, I'm going to change the subject header. I said, okay. So what kind of things are you going to put in the subject header? He said, I said, how are them not responding to you, making you feel at the minute? And they went, well, they're making me stay awake at night. I said, have you ever told them that not responding to you is keeping you up at night because you're trying to get in the way? He said, no. So I said, what could you do, or how could you articulate this? He went, I'm going to put in my subject header, I'm going to put, you are keeping me awake at night. Right. So they put that in the subject header. Within 20 minutes, they'd got a response to the email that they'd sent. And so that's a really small example from the question that you've asked. And I think, but we've got to really understand change at that level. It's not just about the whiteboard. It's not just about problem solving. It's about all of the habits and behaviors that underpin all of these things with how we are, how we communicate, how we build friends or build trust. Mm-hmm. So there are a few. I've got a number of different examples of small things like that. And I think what we've got to try to do is just build on all of these things together. Everybody searches for a silver bullet within improvement and within change, but there isn't a single silver bullet, mm-hmm. because everybody is different, Paul.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
What I put it in very American terms is I call lean small ball, which is a baseball term.
Yeah.
It's a lot of singles and doubles. And I say every once in a while, you'll hit a home run. But yes, you can't count on that. You got to play the small ball game, just like you, right? So in that scenario, if I'm her manager, I have no idea, right? And I get probably 200 emails a day. So I have no idea that my inactivity or my inaction or my indifference is causing that pain to somebody. I have a similar story from my personal history. It's not unlike that one, where I had a production manager who reported to me that came up to me one day because we had worked together for a while. We had a really good relationship. And he said, I got to tell you something. I hate it when you email me, period. And I said, well, but what, why? And he says, well, I would rather you just come and see me because, you know, our offices like don't quite adjoin, but it was pretty close. Yeah. You know, he goes, plus I want to see you, you know, and I want to, you know, have that interaction. And to me, I thought I was doing him a favor because, you know, I was a plant manager. So I'm like, listen, I've got all these meetings. I've got people pulling at me for my time. So I thought I was doing him a favor because I would convey to him information that he needed in what I thought was a timely manner versus having to wait for me to get done with whatever else it was.
Yeah.
And to hit it totally, right? So where I thought I was doing a good thing, he interpreted it as a bad thing. And unless we had that relationship based on trust, I never would have known that. And, you know, worst case scenario, he comes into my office one day and says, I quit, right? Because you're driving me up a wall. And and I love that story that you told, because like I use a lot of Gallup surveys in our workshops. And again, over here in the States, 3.5 million people quit their job every single month out of about 128 million people. And I use that in our courses. I always throw it out to the crowd and ask, what do you guys, you know, every month, how many people do you think quit? And that doesn't include retire or fire or whatever. And usually people, you know, 500,000, 1 million. And it's very eye-opening when I say the real number. And people are like, really? I mean, just think about that. That's every month. And if you assume no repeats, right? So what's that work out to be a year? About 40 million people a year. So about a third of the workforce. Do you think about the waste that's associated with that? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, that is. It's Maya Angelou, I think, and I'm going to butcher one of her quotes now. I think she said something like, people will forget what you said, people forget what you've done, but people never forget how you make them feel. And the only true way you can understand how you've made somebody feel is by asking them, and that's what people will never forget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And isn't it sadly that we don't do that a lot?
Correct.
You know, we just assume that business processes will just take care of it. It's like, I did my thing, I hand it to Lee, and he does his thing. What does he do? I don't know. I never asked him. I never talked to him. We've literally
Completely.
done an event at or work with a medical office. And I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but anytime you go to a new doctor over here, you get a clipboard with like 5 pieces of paper on it, and you got to fill all the stuff out. And 80-90% of every page is the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So we're working with this client, and so we're walking through this process. Well, the very next step in the process is these pieces of paper all get split up, and one goes in your file, one goes in this other thing, blah blah blah. Well, one of these pieces of paper literally goes through a shredder, and I'm like, whoa, hang on. Why did you just do that? And they're like, oh, well, that's the old form. We don't even use that. We amended this other form that has all that same information on it, so we just get down to one. I said, yeah, but that like you're making all your patients, aka your customers, fill this thing out, because I just did it as pretending to go through the process. Nobody told the front folks? And she's like, oh, didn't know that. I said, but you get all these pieces of paper all the time. Why you never like said, hey, just, and literally Lee, they're like 20 feet apart. You never just went, hey, you don't have to do that. She's like, nope. I'm like, it's back to your first right communication, right? It's just right. It's
completely. But that's another, when we think about stand-up comics and those three things from stand-up comedians: connection, performance, and material. They're just leading with the material, the process, the thing that they do, not about joining the dots with the connection elements of it.
Right.
Completely.
So Lee, I do like to take I say it tongue in cheek because this isn't a formal thing, but I do like to take a little break from the formal part of the podcast and play something I call the wicked fun part. Are you up for that?
Let's do it, Paul. Yeah.
All right. So, let's see. How about this one? Any advice for your previous boss?
Oh, that's a great question. So when you say previous boss, so I would say any advice from my previous boss is everybody is different, and it's all right to have some square pegs, round holes. I think it's about understanding how that person is different and how they can benefit yourself, because I am, and I have been, a square peg in a number of different shaped holes, and it's only by setting up my own business and things am I allowed to be myself fully. So if you think about Chrissy's first lesson and always being yourself, I've not always been able to be myself because I've not been the round peg, round hole. So I would just say to them that actually it's all right to be different. It's about understanding how that difference can help you make a difference. That's how I would answer that one, Paul.
Nice. I love it. How about this one? Seeing as we talked a little bit about stand-up comedy, what's the funniest thing that's happened to you recently?
Oh, the funniest thing that's happened to me recently. The funniest thing. So, I mean, apart from my 5-year-old is just hysterical with the innocence of her comments and her remarks. I mean, and I could write a book on her and her comments. So those are just naturally funny things. If I pick what's something that's funny to me that's happened to me, I would have to say funniest thing that's happened to me. It's not necessarily funny, which doesn't really answer the question, but I think the funniest thing. So I was recently featured in a newsletter, Chester Elton's newsletter. I was recently featured with Chris's story in it, and how that came about was he posted a picture on social media of some carrot socks. So he's an author, and he's written a number of books. And the carrot theory, of being the first one, and is the carrot guy. And I just commented on his post, going, "Oh, the carrot thing has just prompted my favorite joke that I use every single time when when I'm allowed to stand up in front of groups of people." So I always say when I'm on stage that I go, "Paul, or to the audience, what's orange and sounds like a parrot?" Do you know what's orange and sounds like a parrot, Paul?
I think I know the answer. I don't want to spoil it though.
Yeah, I've kind of given it away in the lead up to it. Yeah, so it's a parrot. What's orange and sounds like a parrot is a carrot. Sorry, I did it the wrong way around. I've said it that many times. I'm getting myself confused now with Chester. So yeah, so what's orange and sounds like a parrot is a carrot. And I stand on stage and I deliver that, and you get half of the room groaning, and you get half of the room laugh. I like to think that half of the room laughs as well. And I wrote that on Chester's post, and then from that, he's then reached out. We've had a conversation, and I've been featured in a newsletter. So I never expected that when I shared that joke. So I think that ties back to the connection, and just doing something differently, building connection and making good friends with people. You never know when things could lead anywhere. So it's not necessarily the funniest thing, but it's something that was unexpected from writing on somebody's post. Yeah.
Nice. So I get one for you. This is a slight tangent, but so picture in your head you have a drawer full of socks. There's let me make sure I get this one right. So there's 50 white ones and 50 black ones. How many socks do you have to pull out of the drawer before you get a pair?
2.
You could, but how about if you guarantee that you get a pair?
Guarantee to get a pair. 15.
3.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, what an idiot.
No, it's okay. And so I do this. So I use that one sometimes for the same exact. It's sort of like the carrot parrot thing, a little bit, not really, I guess. But I've had that. I got that question, and I'm like, I gotta, in my head, I'm like, I gotta prove how smart I am and how sharp I am. I'm like 51, and the guy's like, nope, 3. And I'm like, I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking, I'm like, finally, I had to go back. I'm like, you got to help. I'm like, I'm sure you're right, but you got to help me. Cause in my head, I'm thinking you pick a white one, you pick a black one, black. Oh, finally get another white one. And he's like, yeah, he goes, but what about the third one? It's either black or white. So now you have a pair. And
I love that.
Right. It got me because I'm like, I got stuck on that first. He's like, well, he goes, really, it's not about who cares if you get the right answer, because it's all about how you react to the,
Yes, I love that. I'm gonna borrow that if that's all right, Paul.
Oh, of course. That's fine. I didn't come up with it, so I have at
it. Yeah, yeah, fantastic.
And just to end the story, I did get the job offer. I didn't take it, but so anyway.
Yeah,
because I don't know, whatever. You like the fact that I asked him about it later.
Yeah.
What are you working towards in your free time?
Yeah, so I've got a very similar. Apart from raising 2 amazing kids, because that's the number one job that I'm trying to do. So my purpose, I believe in my life now, 2.5 years ago, it's kind of crystallized this, is I want to help Chris, his memory, and Chris stay with me. I want his memory to outlive me ultimately, because if I can share those 3 things with as many people as possible, I believe he was taken far too soon, and if I can help him live with me through me, then that's what I want to do. So that's what I'm working to, both professionally and personally. So I'm just currently writing my first book. I'm also preparing a TEDx talk, all around the Chris's 3 lessons, and also becoming confident change leaders. So there's a very like blurred line between me personally and me professionally, because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and also the message that I'm trying to leave behind. Because I was thinking as well, like, the best way for any of us to be remembered is through our families and if they are similar and they have similar values and things. But I would love to be able to influence my great grandchildren in some way, shape, or form. So that is what I'm working on. Both, well, predominantly not in the business because that's client facing work. But yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Nice. So those are some hefty goals. Hat tip to you, Lee.
Yeah, massive. But I feel like it comes down to that thing what we said about before, time being limited, isn't it? So I don't want Chris's 3 lessons to not have the biggest stage that they could possibly have. We all go through life learning different things, and I believe I've had the most random journey to get to where I am. So I used to be a DJ. I've authored, when you say authored, I've written 5 children's books and self-published them on Amazon. I've been an internet marketer, but all as like a side hustle, whilst I've been learning about change. And I think I've had the most random journey to get to this place I'm in today, Paul. And I think I've learned along the way, but how do I pass these learnings on to other people in a way that makes them think enough to do something different? So yeah, that's the reason why, because I think it's important that people can learn from us, or else why else are we here?
Right.
Bit deep, that, isn't it? Bit deep.
Yeah, it very.
Yeah.
It's rare for this show.
Yeah, apologies. Yeah,
no. I love it. I mean, that's, the best shows are, when people listen and they'll, shoot me a text or a LinkedIn message or something and say, hey, that episode that really spoke to me. I really liked this part. And because that's really what I'm going for.
Yeah.
It's just get people to think about it. I mean, I'm not going to get on here and talk with folks about 5S. I mean, you could get on YouTube and watch, you know what I mean? That's number one. It's boring. Well, I shouldn't say it's boring. It's important, but we're not going to talk about it for an hour. I want people to come away from this show with thought-provoking ideas and things that make them think maybe a little bit differently. As lean practitioners, I think that's the point, where that's a little bit about the struggle, right? If this was easy, right, classically anybody would do it. So I'm right there with you. I'll have to, you're making me think too, which I certainly obviously appreciate.
Oh, that's good. No, thank you for that. And thank you again for just the opportunity and the platform to be able to speak with you, Paul. It's good. I'm glad we've been able to do this.
Yeah, for sure. So in the few minutes that we have left, I just want to throw it over to you. Is there anything that we didn't get a chance to chat about, that a point you wanted to make, or a topic you wanted to bring up?
So I would just say the only thing I want to say is those 3 lessons that Chris shared, that always be yourself, make good friends, and time's limited. He had his reasons why they were important to him when he was reflecting on his 39 years of life. For the last 2.5 years, coming up to 3 years now, I've been trying to understand what they mean to me, and I'm getting really close to that, about how I can always be myself more, how I can make better friends and connections, and also act a little bit quicker than I had done. And I think the importance of those 3 things are not Chris's 3 reasons, not Chris's reasons for those 3 lessons, not my reasons for those 3 lessons, but what they mean to you as an individual. So how can you better always be yourself? Because I got a couple of tattoos, and this one on my wrist is this is rubbish for audio listeners, by the way, but there's a gap of 2 inches below my wrist before the tattoo starts, because when I got it, I was conscious about what people would think of me with tattoos. If I had a shirt and I went into a client site, what would they think of him? And now I don't care about that. So that is really a journey about that I've been on about always being myself. So I think the one thing I would just say is, what does always being yourself mean to you, Paul, and to your listeners? What does making good friends, connections, clients, customers mean, and how effective and efficient are you in that? Do you send a message and then not contact them again, or not? And then time being limited are the things that you've been putting off that are really important to you, that you could actually move a step closer to today, or break it down a little bit and move a step closer to. So yes, the Chris's 3 lessons, but I'd love them to be everybody's 3 lessons if they truly understood what they mean to themselves. And I think that's the importance and the beauty of what Chris has shared with me.
Agreed, 100%. So I look forward to so I guess you and I have to race now, because I'm writing my first book too.
Oh, are you? How's it going?
Slow.
Yeah.
I co-authored one years ago, but that was essentially just one chapter, and there was 8 or 10 of us that wrote a chapter each. So that's how we came up with the book. This one's just going to be just me, and it's a daunting, intimidating task. But
what's the subject? What are you hoping to achieve from it?
It's it's going to be about lean leadership. So I'm going to put I grew up in Maine. And so I'm going to put kind of a Mainer spin on it. So I want it to be not unlike a conversation. I want it to be thought provoking and fun and entertaining. I want people to get something out of it, but also enjoy it at the same time.
Yeah, and not to put you on the spot, when are you hoping to have the first draft written?
That's a great question. I don't know. I haven't assigned myself a timeline. And I've waffled on it, to be honest with you, because the engineer side of me says you absolutely have to, because it's a deadline thing.
Yeah.
But the other side, the creative side of me says, I don't necessarily want to do that, because I want it to flow and I want it to feel good, because I think that comes through. Some of my best blog posts and videos come when I feel that urge to say something, versus when I've written articles for a magazine or something where I have a due date, so I have to come up with something, and it's okay, but it doesn't have the emotion behind it. So I'm struggling there a little bit.
So just on that point there, Paul, I think that is when people introduce change in organizations, sometimes they'll go, every Wednesday we're going to have a problem solving event, and we're going to have that recurring all of the times. And then after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, people are turning up to the session and they've not got anything to solve, and they're thinking on the spot. They're, because of that the same thing about you and your book writing process, because it's forced. So I guess my final question to you, and you don't have to answer this now, is how can you prompt yourself so it's not forced in that way, so that you're moving towards your goal, but not in a forced way?
That's a good question, Lee. I'll try to answer, because I think it deserves an answer. Honestly, one thing I've thought about is just sort of, I don't know if I want to call it a sabbatical, but like Jamie Flinchbaugh, I don't know if you know him. He wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to Lean.
Yeah.
Right, way back when. He's working on another book, and I think, because I've seen him tweet and LinkedIn message about this, I think he actually did that. Where I want to say he rented like a cabin or something, and he went away for a month or two, and just. And I'm like, you know what? That's really not a bad idea, because you take away all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And I can see where if I gave myself all of that time in just a big bucket, and say, when inspiration hits, you're right. And when it doesn't, you don't. And you don't have to switch over to do something else, because knowing me, you can't see it, but I have a notebook over here where it's my to-do list, and it's like 4 pages long. There's a whiteboard right over here with another list, right? So that's me. I'm constantly like, that's just my personality. I'm all over the place. And I can see where, per our previous discussion, we're going to be sitting here 6 months from now, and I'm going to have all the same excuses.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't because I was busy and this, that, right? So shame on me, right?
Yeah. No, but seriously though, good luck with it. And I'd love to keep in contact with you about your process and my process, and maybe we can find some way to keep each other accountable for that going forward.
Deal.
Perfect. Let's
Sounds
do it.
great. All right, Lee, I will let you go, sir. Thank you again so much for coming on and sharing Chris's story. It was very meaningful. I know everybody's going to get a lot from it. So thank you for sharing.
No, thanks, Paul. It's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat with you. Thank you.
All right, sir. Take it easy. Hey, everybody, it's Paul. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. You've really made doing this podcast a very rewarding experience for me. I get a lot of messages from listeners, and everyone has something nice to say, which I very much appreciate. Of course, I'm always open to feedback on ways we can make it better. I mean, that's Kaizen after all. And by no stretch do I claim to have got this all figured out. So if there's things that I could do better, please, by all means, feel free to reach out and let me know. And likewise, if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, also let me know. There's a chance I don't know who those folks are. So somebody that you can help put us in touch with, somebody you want to learn more about, certainly let me know and I'll reach out to those folks. But I hope you find the podcast fun and entertaining, educational, and maybe even a little inspirational, I hope. That's really what I'm going after with this whole thing. So thanks again. And one small ask, if you don't mind, if you listen, whatever your preferred platform is, if you could just, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple or whatever, again, whatever platform you listen to, it helps. The algorithms like it. So if you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody.